Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming back. Thanks for your interest in these teachings, these precious teachings that will allow us to get out of the wheel of suffering. Oh my God, we are so fortunate. So please just take a moment and bring to mind very clearly your motivation for being here today. Why are you in this class? Make it as big as you can. Thank you. So today we're doing the three principal paths, right? And we spent some time on renunciation, um, the wish to be free of the cycle of pain, of having to take on, being forced to take on over and over and over again, body and mind that is impure, that is suffering. And then next, bodhicitta, the wish to become fully enlightened in order to benefit all living beings everywhere. That must grow out of renunciation, of recognizing our own situation. How can we help others if we don't even see that we ourselves are stuck in pain? And now we take a step onto the third of the three principal paths. And that path, if you remember from way back at the beginning of this course, in Tibetan, it's Yang Dak Bek Dawa. Yang Dak Bek Dawa. And if you remember, that means correct view, correct worldview. And basically, it means understanding emptiness, understanding reality. If we don't understand emptiness, if we don't understand why things happen the way they do, why we have the experiences that we have, we will not be able to reach nirvana. We will not be able to become enlightened. And what is reaching nirvana? But removing permanently all of our negative emotions, all of our anger, jealousy, desire. I mean, can you imagine never being upset ever again by anything? Having a mind that is completely calm. And we can't reach that state without understanding Young Dakpe Dawa, correct view. So there are two ways of seeing Young Dakpe Dawa, of seeing correct view. One way is with using reasoning and mental images. And we can do that pretty easily. That's the normal way we interact with the world, right? And then the second way is by seeing it directly. To see emptiness or the nature of reality directly, we must be in a state of deep meditation, in a very high state of deep meditation. And in fact, our minds are at a different realm than the one we're in now, if you are who you appear to be. Now we're in the desire realm. In this state of meditation or stage of meditation, from which we directly see the nature of reality, we're at the preliminary stage of the form realm. So in Buddhist philosophy, there are three realms: desire realm, form realm, and formless realm. So the desire realm, you know, is where we're mostly concerned about food and sex. Those are the primary things that drive us. And hopefully we have a higher motivation for being in this class than one of those two things. So while our body is in the desire realm when we're meditating, we want to reach with our minds the preliminary stage to the form realm. And in that stage, the second way of seeing Young Dakpe Tao, of seeing correct view, that is the only thing that is occupying our mind. We are only seeing emptiness. There are no other thoughts going on. There are no other sensations going on. We're not even aware that we have a body, or a mind for that matter, or that there's some me who's sitting there meditating. All that is gone. The only thing that is in our awareness at that time is what we're going to talk about tonight. Not in a narrative way, but the mind is still and completely focused on what we call emptiness. So this first way of encountering or seeing correct view we're seeing it with logic, but that is also a real way of seeing it. It's not like a pretend thing. It's not like a fantasy sort of thing. We are using our logic and understanding this this concept about how it is that things exist. And we use this kind of reasoning like all day long. We're using it. Like I can sit here and in my room and my office door is closed and I hear the cat meowing. Well, actually, all I hear is a meow, meow, and my mind uses reasoning to go, oh, that's Rebecca's cat, Alma, and she's outside the door. I don't have to see here. My mind takes these sensory inputs and then I understand that it's the cat outside the door. And when I hear this little weird little sound, I don't know how to describe it. But when I hear it, I know that she's over at the little bowl that I have set up for her in the kitchen, snacking on kibble by that sound. So I know, okay, she still has food. She's getting her food. Maybe she won't be too hungry by the time class ends, It's valid. It's a real way of seeing. But in order to get out of this korva that we're in, this cycle, this never-ending cycle of having to take on impure bodies over and over and over, is by seeing it directly. So let's get to the first way of seeing it. So we're going to talk first about Denpa Ni. Say Denpa, Denpa, Ni, Ni. Denpa Ni means the two truths. Denpa is truth, and Ni, spelled like this, is two. The two truths. In a way, so these two truths, the first is the preliminary to seeing the second. One way of looking at it. But let's look at it in terms of truth first. So what is true mean to you? What is truth? Does someone want to share in the chat, please? What is truth? What does that mean to you? I mean, I don't know how to say truth in any of your languages. But if I did and I said, oh, please explain to me, what is truth? Fact? Good? Anybody else? Sometimes people talk about it in terms of um, like being correct is a truth, right? Setting up this dichotomy of truth and false, true and false. And fact is also one way of looking at it. It is translated, Dempa is translated as truth into English, but it's not referring to a fact, and it's not referring to correct and incorrect or true and false. So the first thing to do is to understand what is meant by truth and why is it, even in the Sanskrit and the Tibetan, do they use the word truth? So we think about, okay, if something is divided into two, there's something that's being divided. So what is it that we're dividing into two? Do you think we're dividing facts into two? Or two things? True things into two? This pile of true things and this pile of true things? What we're doing is we're dividing reality into two. Realization is a good guess, but it's more than just a mental state that we're dividing. We're dividing all of reality into two. They are the two truths are the divisions of existence. And each of these two truths refer to actual things. So, this is the first truth. This is the first truth. This is the first truth. This bag of bones is the first truth. My mind is the first truth. Utpala is the first truth. So the point is that it's not truth that we're dividing, but objects, reality. Existence itself. Like one way of dividing all of existence into two is by thinking about, oh, some things are permanent and some things are impermanent. In other words, some things are unchanging and some things are changing. That's one way to divide all of existence into two. And there's like a countless number minus 3 that are changing and only a few that are unchanging when we divide all of existence that way. We can divide all of existence into pure and impure. Like the correct worldview in the mind of a fully enlightened being, that's pure. They say all changing things are impure, except for Dharma. But there are nuances, so don't carve that into stone. So we have these two realities then. So really what we're talking about is reality 1 and reality 2. The first one is called Kunsop Dempa. Say Kunzop, and Dempa. Kunzop. Kunzop was first translated into English as conventional, relative. Convention as in, oh, our convention is to call that thing with 4 wheels that we get into to transport ourselves from here to there. By convention, we call that a car. But the word means deceptive. It means bogus. Do you know bogus? False, untrue. So we have our first group of the two truths is untrue truths. Wait a minute. How can we divide truth into two? I mean, and one of them be untrue. That's not a truth. That can't be true. We have to get that to that place of dissonance in our mind. That the first truth isn't true. The first truth is deceptive reality. Reality that deceives. So we're not talking about ways of thinking about things or our perception of things, but we're talking about things themselves. We're talking about all existing things. And what do we mean when we say that something is a deceptive truth or deceptive reality? What we mean is that it appears to exist in a way other than it does exist. So, in a way, it's like a mirage. A mirage appears to us that there's usually mirages are about water off in the distance, that there's this optical illusion of water, and it looks like water. It appears to be water, but it's not. We walk closer and it disappears. So, deceptive truth, deceptive reality are things that appear to be one way when they exist in another way. They're fakers. they deceive us. So again, we're not talking about being deceptive to a particular perception of a thing. A perception, an experience, is a mental event. And we're talking about things. Now, it does get a little tricky because in the definition of deceptive reality, it's to a deceived state of mind. A thing appears one way or appears in a way other than it is. And that just means to a normal person, a farmer, a bus driver, someone walking down the street. Things appear one way in a way that's different from the way they are. The way they look, the way they appear, and the way they are different. So deceptive truth, what it means to be deceptive exactly. Like we have this in general way, it appears other than the way it is. And then what it means more specifically, what is that deception exactly? We have to look at the different Buddhist philosophical schools because they have different ideas about exactly what is deceptive. So we'll do that in a minute. But first, let's say, what is the second truth? The second truth is Dundam Dempa. Say Dundam Dempa. And Dundam means ultimate. Ultimate. So we're dividing reality into that which is deceptive and that which is ultimate. Ultimate truth, ultimate reality, maybe you've heard of the four truths, the four Arya truths. That life is suffering. There's a cause to suffering. There's a path. There is a state of mind that is free of suffering. And there's a path to reach that state of being beyond suffering. Those are the four truths that an Arya, a person who has seen ultimate reality directly, realizes when they come out of their deep meditation on emptiness. those four truths, they're not ultimate truth. They are not ultimate reality. They are basically four facts that a person who has seen emptiness directly realizes in their heart directly after they see ultimate reality directly. You may have heard people say that when you see, after you have seen emptiness directly, there is no more doubt in the path, in the Dharma teachings. No doubt that you couldn't reach a state that is free of suffering. So those four truths, truth there means like fact. And someone who has seen emptiness directly realizes those facts. So it's simply what is ultimate reality is that things appear as they are. So deceptive reality, things appear to be something that they're not. They appear to exist in a way that's different than how they exist. And ultimate reality is where how things appear and how they exist are in concert. They match. They fit. They're not at odds with each other. But on a deeper level, or one way of looking at that term ultimate reality and thinking of it as things appearing to exist the way they do is in relation to deceptive reality, which is things appearing to exist other than the way they do. So ultimate reality is the absence of appearing to exist other than the way the thing exists. All objects, all existing things, I should say, possess both realities. But all objects are not both realities. So there's a difference between having glasses and being glasses, right? When you say, oh, I have glasses, you don't mean, oh, I'm glasses. That would be silly, right? So all objects in the world have both a nature of being ultimate and of being deceptive. Even emptiness itself, which we're going to talk more about today and next time, but even emptiness itself has a deceptive nature. So all objects have both a deceptive nature and an ultimate nature. So are there any questions so far today on what we've talked about? Don't be shy. No questions. Okay. Extraordinary.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Venerable Utpala, could you please tell a little bit more about how emptiness could be deceptive, could have deceptive reality in it?
That is a very good question. And what we're talking about now is at such a high level that I fear going too deep without giving this high level relationship between the two and like how it applies in our life, that I think we need to understand before we can dive more deeply into how is it possible that ultimate truth is deceptive. But just in a general way, Venerable Kadrin, I think that was your voice. We can say that it appears in a way other than it is. And sometimes you do hear people talking about emptiness, the ultimate nature of reality, in a way that's very concrete, you know? This is it. That it is something out there. But in order to get to that out there, we have to talk about how it is that things appear to us. We have to understand appearances before we can talk about deception and the ways we're deceived. But thank you so much for the question. And there's another question here about what are you asking about what is the fourth truth? Or what are the four truths? All four. Tween? Is that how I say your name? Well, I'll just go through the four quickly. The first is the truth of suffering. And actually, let me just back up for one moment. When a person sees emptiness directly, has that a direct experience in deep meditation, and then comes out of that experience, their mind comes back to the desire realm. They have this understanding, this realization of the four truths, and each of the four has four aspects. So it's 16 things, really, that someone who has seen emptiness directly realizes after their experience. So the first is the truth of suffering. And we did talk about suffering in different ways in the earlier part of this course, right? We talked about 6 sufferings. We can divide it into 3 sufferings. There are different ways to talk about what suffering means. It's not necessarily just like mental anguish or physical pain. The second truth is the truth that there is a cause to suffering. Suffering has a cause. And those of us who can think about cause and effect, and those of us who can recall what we talked about in the 4 laws of karma a couple of classes ago, where if you don't create the cause, the result will not come, right? So that's the third truth, is that there's the truth at the end of suffering. Suffering can end. And then the fourth truth is that there is a path to reaching the end of suffering. And this book, the 3 principal paths, is just such a book. It contains just such a path, the steps we take to reach that state of being free from suffering. Being free of having to take on, being forced to take on over and over again, impure heaps, suffering, body and mind. Thank you. So back to deceptive reality and ultimate reality. When we're walking around and we're not thinking at all about how it is that things exist. We're just living our lives. We're going grocery shopping or going to pick up the kids from school or making dinner or writing a thesis on how to end cancer, or we're working on our day-to-day life. We are encountering deceptive reality all day long. We don't even know it until someone teaches you, until someone shares with you what you're experiencing as appearing different than the way it is deceptive truth. You're being lied to. We don't see deceptive truth. So what does it mean to say, wait a minute, everything is deceptive truth, and I'm seeing deceptive truth, but I'm not seeing deceptive truth? What the heck are you saying, Utpala? We're not even thinking about whether or not, let me back up. We're not even thinking about how things exist as we're walking around. We open a door and walk into a room. There's no question or concern in our mind about what does it mean to open a door? What does it mean to perceive something? What does it mean that my perception has changed from a closed door to an open door? What does it mean to say that there's now a room in front of me that wasn't there before? We're not going below surface level. We're basically walking around on automatic. In a way, we're kind of like zombies. We take the things that appear to us and we just, go about our business. We're not seeing that what appears to us is deceptive and is appearing as deceptive. We don't know that we've been deceived. We're just walking around, making dinner. And we're certainly not walking around thinking or having, even thinking about how You know, we're not thinking that this thing is deceiving me. This thing, which to my eyes is just long and thin and blackish. We're just thinking pen, unless we're a dog, but we're not even going that far. We just think pen, and I'm going to write something. So we're not even thinking that, much less that to talk about the ultimate reality that this thing has is that it is not. It is free of being the thing it appears to be. It is free of, in the what we were just now talking about, it's free of being a pen. So we basically walk around all day, oblivious to or ignorant of how things exist and how they appear to us to exist. That's why it's so very powerful that if we take this walking around time, if we take the times when we're doing something that's like a habit for us, and we continue to do that thing, but at the same time think about, gosh, you know, I remember this teaching, and I was told that really all I'm seeing is something long and black, and it has some other kind of reality to it other than the way it appears to me. Gosh, I wonder if that's true. Even just asking that question, gosh, I wonder, shakes samsara. It shakes the suffering world, the circle of pain. So let's talk about how it is that things appear to us. Like, what are appearances? The word in Tibetan is tendril. Say tendril. Even if you don't want to learn Tibetan, you can just say tendril and plant a seed. Tendril means dependent origination. Sometimes you see it translated as dependent arising. It's talking about the appearance side of things. So if our way of dividing reality into two is about deceptive reality and ultimate reality, and those two things have to do with how things appear related to how they exist, then we should understand that we're talking here about the appearances side of things. Oh, bye, twin. We'll see you next time. So dependent arising, which I like to say just because it's arising is easier to say than origination. Fewer syllables. Dependent arisings are a way of explaining the deceptive reality of things. You could say also that it's the positive side of things in the sense of it's the aspect we can see. This does get, language is so, and language is so cool in that we can share concepts with each other. We can communicate with each other. We can build relationship with each other through language, but it's also so limiting. I have to remember that language, that words are also deceptive reality, right? And that they have an ultimate nature that's free of that deception. One day I will be able to use language perfectly. So anyway, we're talking about dependent arisings, how things appear to us. And in the first truth, they're appearing to us in a deceptive way, in that they're appearing to exist in a way other than the way they exist. Okay, Utpala, tell us more. So to tell you more, we have to talk about philosophy. In Buddhism, there are 4 different philosophical schools. And the primary thing that makes them different from each other is how they think about dependent arising and emptiness, or the ultimate nature of things. There are some other differences, but the primary difference is about that. How things appear to us and how things exist. So when we talk about philosophical schools, we're not talking about like the 4 traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, for example. We're not talking about Nyingma, Sakya, Kagyupa, Galupa. We're not talking about those. We're talking about the schools that have the philosophical schools that have existed since the days back, you know, well over 1,000 years ago, when Buddhism was being studied and practiced in India. Well over 1,000, like 1,700 years ago. And there are 4 of them. The first one is called, in Sanskrit, it's called Vaibhashika. Vaibhashika. You may have heard that word. You don't have to remember that word. Geshe Michael likes to call them detailists now. And they follow the Abhidharma, which is a text that actually Stanley is working on in our Mixed Nuts group. And that is, it's called the Treasure House of Knowledge. That's what Abhidharma means. And people of this school are enamored with figuring out, oh gosh, I have to speed up. I only have a few minutes left. Oh, hang tight, live translators, here we go. So, detailists. I'm not going to get into detail about detailists. Second one, they're called, Geshe Michael likes to translate them as, it's Sautrantika, but he likes to translate them as sutrist. And they're mainly concerned with logic, or their main interest is logic. The third one is Chittamatra, or mind only. And then the fourth one is Madhyamaka in Sanskrit, or middle way. Middle way. The fourth one has 2 branches to it. We have the Svatantrika, or the independent branch. And then we have the Prasangika, or the consequence branch. And those 2 names, independent branch and consequence branch, are names that they're related to how it is that those people like to use debate, how they like to use logic. The independent branch, they have this notion that if they state something in a particular way, you will understand it. That there's some independent truth in how you present something. And then the consequence branch, they are a little more refined, but they like to present you with absurd consequences of your position. So let's say, just as an example, that you come to me and you say, okay, let's debate, Utpala. Let's talk about fruit. all fruit is red. And if I'm a consequence branch person, all I have to do is say, oh, so oranges are red, huh? So I'm showing an absurd consequence of saying all fruits are red by just saying, oh, I guess oranges are red, huh? But when you take the course 13, and actually it shows up in a few other courses too, you get more into logic. Now there's a way of grouping these 4 philosophical schools. And that is directly related to dependent arising, which gets us back to understanding appearances and why they're deceptive. So hang with me. You can group them in many different ways, these schools. But what we're talking about is a grouping into 3 or 3. The first group are called functionalists. And in this group are the first 3 schools we talked about: the detailists, the sutrists, and the mind only. Altogether, they're called functionalists. And the reason they are is because all 3 of those schools, they believe that if an object does something, if an object functions, like this pen functions to write, they say it's real. So they say all things that do something are real. And it's the things that don't do something that aren't real. The second group isn't really a group because there's only one member, and that's the lower branch of the middle way, and that's called the independent group. And for them, they say, thinking about things in terms of whether or not they do something doesn't go far enough, because there are some things, not many, but there are some things that don't do anything, like space, like place. So they say, now you really need to go farther than talking about things that are under the influence of causes, which is what the functionalist group does. And the independent branch says we need to think about parts. If we think about parts, all things have parts. So we can talk about all existing things. We're not leaving anything out. And the consequence branch says, they say Ming De Taksam. They say we have to go, if you're just talking about the parts of a thing, like We have the clicker. We have the little thing here that we can use to attach to our shirt. We have the tip. We've got a tube filled with ink. We've got a spring. There's so many different parts. And the consequence branch of the middle way says, you can have these pile of parts on the table, and it won't be this thing. It's not this thing until you name it and have a mental image of it as being that thing. Sam means merely. Tak means to label. And Mingde is name. And with this spelling, mental image. So we're labeling things with a name and mental image. And until we've done that, I mean, like that's the missing piece. That's the piece that you miss if you're just looking at parts. That's what they say to the independent branch people. If you really want to include everything, you need to include this part, that how it is we experience the world is that we take these sensory perceptions, sights, sounds, smells, tastes, thoughts, and we merely label them. We like group them together, and we label them with a name and a mental image. That's what's going on. So, appearances, seeing deceptive reality. There will come a day, and this is called it's Jurlam Chuchok. This is we're on our path to attain enlightenment. And there is a time, it's called the highest level of the second of 5 paths, called Jorlam. And we see, Geshe Michael describes it as you're making a cup of tea for your teacher. And you're standing at the stove, and you're looking at the pot on the stove, and you see, you have the experience of your mind projecting a label onto colors and shapes. Uh-oh, you all froze for me. I wonder if that means that I'm frozen. No, are you here? Okay. Good, okay. So you see, you have the experience of yourself labeling what is colors and shapes as a pot on the stove. That is the very first time you see deceptive reality as deceptive reality. And that whole process of seeing yourself creating your reality is called heat. Heat, like hot. So that's the very highest point of the path of accumulation, which I'm not going to get into the 5 paths because we don't have time. But the next path is the path of seeing. The next path, the next realization is the direct perception of ultimate reality. So it's kind of a clue to yourself where if you're doing something and all of a sudden you see, you have the experience of seeing yourself projecting a name and a mental image onto what are colors and are shapes, or you see yourself projecting the name of a song onto sounds. Go meditate. Click, go find your meditation cushion and get into meditation on the nature of reality, because you are so close to seeing it. Okay. So these 3 groups are talking about things appearing. The first group based on causes. That group of the detailists, the sutrists, and the mind-only schools. Things are based on causes. The second group, the independent branch, they're seeing things depending on their parts. And the consequence group, the third group, is seeing things based on projecting a name and mental image, right? Now, what is emptiness? We have to talk about self. Doc. Doc means self. And Buddhism says that things lack a self nature. Things are selfless. And this is one of the most misunderstood things about Buddhism, in my understanding of talking with other people. What the heck does being selfless mean? Because, you know, we're always talking about like, oh, myself. And there is that kind of self. There is, you know, myself, Utpala. She exists nominally according to the consequence branch, but there is this collection of bag of bones and a mind that you know, we put together, and that's the self. That's myself. But this self that the Buddha was talking about in terms of being selfless, that everything is selfless, or put the opposite way, nothing has a self. Even this doesn't have a self. Even ultimate reality doesn't have a self. That self is a self nature, a nature of being what it is from its own side, a nature of being what it is from its own side. That the pen, if this pen had a self-nature, its penness, its being a pen would be coming at me. And everyone could see that this is a pen. No one would be confused about that. In fact, regardless of our language differences, we'd all be using the sound, the draw in Tibetan, the sound, pen. If this was a pen from its own side, if it had the self nature of being a pen from its side. But we have to look at what exactly is this self that is absent. Like, what is the mistaken self? Right? What is the wrong self? Wrong kind of self? What is the kind of self that doesn't exist? What is the self that we deny? What is the gakja? And gakja means that which we deny. What is the self that we think exists, but doesn't exist at all? We utterly deny it. We look back at the three groups again, because they think about this differently. So according to the detailists, those who say that, oh, things appear to us based on causes and conditions. So the thing that they deny, the thing that they say the gakja is, that selflessness is that things exist independent of their causes. That there is something that could exist separately from the things that caused it. Because remember, for them, what's real are things that are function, things that function, things that do things, things that are caused. The independent branch, the ones who say, oh, things exist because they have parts. They depend on their parts. So the thing, their gakja, selflessness to the independent branch, is a thing that could exist independent of its parts. And then the consequence branch, the highest branch, the highest group, for them, things exist as merely labeled with a name and a mental image. So for them, the thing that is denied, the self-existent thing that doesn't exist, never could exist, never will exist, is something that exists independently of that process of being labeled with a name and mental image. And we're at time. So I have covered everything you need for your homework. And we come with your questions for next time, which is our last class. I really wanted another like 10 minutes, but there we have it. Now I'm over time. So please rejoice about your being in this class, and think about how it is you can use what I've talked about today to reach your highest motivation, to make your motivation become manifest in the world. Dedicate our work towards that. And then I'll see you next time. Thank you so much. A little hint for thinking about it over the next day is how you can use it in your life is related to nyormongs, or negative emotions. Think about where those come from and why you'd be able to get rid of them. Oh, my deep apologies. I'm so sorry, but we have to go. See you in a couple of days.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. A wonderful teaching.
Oh,
Please
good.
stay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.